Hello everyone, this is Mary Grace Sarabosing. I am continuing the report about Humanistic Psychoanalysis by Fromm. Character orientation. In Fromm's theory, personality is reflected in one's character orientation. That is, a person's relatively permanent way of relating people and things. Fromm defined personality as the inherited and acquired psychic qualities which make an individual unique. The most important of the acquired qualities of personality is character, defined as the relatively permanent system of all non-instinctual strivings through which man relates himself to the human and natural world. Fromm believed that character is a substitute for the lack of instincts. Instead of acting according to their instincts, people act according to their character. By acting according to their character traits, humans can behave both efficiently and consistently. People relate to the world in two ways, by acquiring and using things or assimilation, and by relating to self and others, or socialization. Or in general, people can relate to things and to other people either non-productively or productively. Non-productive orientation. Strategies that fail to move people closer to positive freedom and self-realization. However, non-productive orientations are not entirely negative. Each has both positive and negative aspect. It is a blend of several orientation, but one orientation is dominant. There are four non-productive orientation. First is receptive, second is exploitative, third is hoarding, fourth is marketing. Receptive. The source of all good lies outside themselves, and that the only way they can relate to the world is to receive things including love, knowledge, and material possession. It is characterized by constant need of approval, support, and recognition from their family, friends, and others. But they don't reciprocate the support. They don't give it back to the people who support them. These people rarely provide any input to another person's life, nor do they look to help other people out. They also tend to have poor social skills and often difficulties in making decisions because they are constantly in need of approval. These people are too dependent. The negative qualities of receptive people include passivity, submissiveness because they accept anything without active response or resistance, and lack of self-confidence. Their positive traits are loyalty. They are loyal to their giver, acceptance because they easily accept things, and trust because they trust their giver. Exploitative. Like receptive people, exploitative characters believe that the source of all good is outside themselves. The difference between receptive people and exploitative people is they aggressively take what they desire rather than passively receive it. It is a type that willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate others in order to get what they need. They establish link and relationship with other people just out of pure selfish interest. They tend to seek people with low self-esteem to exploit them. Fromm actually believe that this is the most common personality type. On the negative side, exploitative characters are egocentric, conceited, arrogant, and seducing. On the positive side, they are impulsive, proud, charming, and self-confident. Hoarding. Hoarding characters seek to save that which they have already obtained. They hold everything in sight and do not let go of anything. This character refers to people who lay a lot of emphasis on material possessions. They cope with insecurities by never parting with anything. They often seem to care about their material possessions than they care about other people. These people is also not satisfied with what they have obtained. Hoarding characters keep money, feelings, and thoughts to themselves. In relationship, for example, they tend to preserve it rather than allowing it to change and grow. They stay in the past and repelled by anything new. The hoarding characters may sound like Freud's anal characters, but Fromm believes that hoarding characters are not a result of sexual drives, but rather an interest in all that is not alive. Negative traits of the hoarding personality include rigidity, sterility, obstinacy, compulsivity, and lack of creativity. Positive characteristics are orderliness, cleanliness, and punctuality. Marketing. Marketing characters see themselves as commodities, with their personal value dependent on their exchange value, that is, their ability to sell themselves. It is quite common in the workplace. These types tend to be opportunistic and they actually have no problem changing their belief system and values, depending on what they think will get them ahead. They also look at relationships from the viewpoint of what they would actually themselves gain about this relationship. Example, marrying someone because of social status or money. They are basically empty vessels waiting to be filled with character that is marketable. Negative traits of marketing characters are aimless, opportunistic, inconsistent, and wasteful. Some of their positive qualities include changeability, open-mindedness, adaptability, and generosity. Positive orientation. Productive people work toward positive freedom and continuing realization of their potential. They are the most healthy of all the character types. There are 3 dimensions of positive orientation. First is work. Healthy people value work as a means of creative self-expression. They are not working to exploit others but to produce their necessities. Second is love. Productive love is characterized by care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Healthy people then possess biophilia, which is a vigor, an enthusiasm, or love for life. They want to influence people through love and reason, not by force. Fromm believes that love of others and love of self must work hand in hand, but self-love must come first. You cannot give what you don't have.
Reasoning or thinking. Productive reasoning cannot be separated from productive work and love. Healthy people see themselves as they are and not as how they want themselves to be or self-delusion. All in all, Fromm believes that healthy people survive to their ability to receive and give things to other people, to take things when appropriate, and work, love, and think productively.
Personality disorders. It is a way of thinking, feeling, and behaving that deviates from the expectation of the culture, causes distress and problems functioning. If healthy people are able to work, love, and think productively, unhealthy persons are more likely to have problems. Fromm held that psychologically disturbed people are incapable of love and have failed to establish union with others, thus resulting to the 3 severe personality disorders, which are necrophilia, malignant narcissism, and incestuous symbiosis. Necrophilia. The term necrophilia means love of death and usually refers to sexual perversion in which a person desires sexual contact with a corpse. However, Fromm used necrophilia in a more generalized sense to denote any attraction to death. It can be described as passionate attraction to all that is dead, decayed, putrid, and sickly. It is the passion to transform that which is alive into something unalive, to destroy for the sake of destruction, the exclusive interest in all that is purely mechanical. It is the passion to tear apart living structures. They hate humanity, they are racist and bullies, they love bloodshed, torture, and terror. Malignant narcissism. Narcissistic individuals are preoccupied with themselves, but this concern is not limited to admiring themselves in the mirror. Preoccupation with one's body often lead to hypochondriasis or an obsessive attention to one's health, and moral hypochondriasis or a preoccupation with guilt about previous transgressions. These are people who feel superior, have lack of empathy, and are obsessed with having the complete attention of those around them. In the case of malignant narcissism, the object of narcissism is not anything the person does or produces, but something that he has. For instance, his body, his looks, his health, or his wealth. The malignant nature of this type of narcissism lies in the fact that it lacks the corrective element which we find in the benign form. Malignant narcissistic person quoted that if I am great because of some quality I have and not because of something I achieve, I do not need to be related to anybody or anything. When their efforts are criticized by others, they react with anger and rage, frequently striking out against their critics, trying to destroy them. If the criticism is overwhelming, they may unable to destroy it, and so they turn their rage inward. The result is depression, a feeling of worthlessness. Although depression, intense guilt, and hypochondriasis may appear to be anything but self-glorification. Fromm believed that each of these could be symptomatic of deep underlying narcissism. Incestuous symbiosis, extreme dependence on the mother or mother surrogate. Incestuous symbiosis is an exaggerated form of the more common and more benign mother fixation. For example, men with incestuous symbiosis will want constant care and admiration from women, and if the incestuous symbiotic relationship is threatened, the person will feel anxious or depressed. It distorts reasoning powers, capacity for authentic love, and prevents people from achieving independence and integrity. Fromm agreed more with Harry Stack Sullivan than with Freud. Sexual strivings are not the cause of the fixation to mother, but the result. Some people might possess all these three personality disorders, that is, they are attracted to death, they are narcissistic, and they are incestuous symbiotic. Such people formed what Fromm called the syndrome of decay. He contrasted this syndrome of decay with syndrome of growth, which is made up of the opposite qualities, namely biophilia, love, and positive freedom. Both the syndrome of decay and the syndrome of growth are extreme forms of development, and most people have average psychological health. Psychotherapy. Fromm was trained as an orthodox Freudian analyst but became bored with standard analytic techniques. He then evolved his own system of therapy, which he called humanistic psychoanalysis. Humanistic psychoanalysis looks at people from a historical and cultural perspective rather than a strictly psychological one. It is more concerned with those characteristics common to a culture. Fromm believed that the aim of therapy is for the patient to come to know themselves. Therefore, therapy should be built on a personal relationship between therapist and patients. In this spirit of relatedness, patients and therapists might develop transference or countertransference. Transference occurs when a person redirects some of their feelings or desires for another person to an entirely different person. For example, is when you observe characteristics of your father in a new boss. You attribute fatherly feelings to this person. It can be good or bad feelings. Countertransference is a redirection of therapist feelings towards the client. For example, a therapist may need or have difficulty in conversing with a patient. A therapist may begin unwittingly to lead the conversation and provide additional prompts to the person in treatment to encourage discussion. Dream analysis. Fromm believed that dreams as well as fairy tales and myths are expressed in a symbolic language, the only universal language humans have developed. But not all dream symbols are universal. Some are accidental and dependent on the dreamer's mood before going to sleep. Others are regional or national and dependent on climate, geography, and dialect. For example, fire may symbolize warmth and home to some people, but to some people it symbolizes death and destruction. Similarly, the sun may represent a threat to desert people, but growth and life to people in cold climate. Fromm believed the therapist should not try to be scientific in understanding a patient. Only with the attitude of relatedness can another person be truly understood. The therapist should not view the patient as an illness or a thing, but a person with the same human needs that all people possess. Fromm's method of investigation. Fromm gathered data on human personality from many sources, including psychotherapy, cultural anthropology, and psychohistory. In this section, we will tackle about the anthropological study of life in a Mexican village and Fromm's psychobiographical analysis of Adolf Hitler. Social character in a Mexican village. Study of social character in an isolated farming village in Mexico found evidence of all character orientations except the marketing one. Fromm believed that the marketing character was a product of modern commerce, and that it is most likely to exist on societies where trade is no longer personal and where people regard themselves as commodities. It is not surprising that the research team found that the marketing orientation did not exist among these peasant villagers. However, they found out some of the character types. The most common, which is the non-productive receptive type. People of this orientation tended to look up to others and devoted much energy in trying to please those whom they regarded as superiors. Second is the productive hoarding character. People of this type were hardworking, productive, and independent. They usually farmed their own plot of land and relied on saving part of each crop for seed and for food in the event of a future crop failure. Hoarding rather than consuming was essential to their lives. Third is the non-productive exploitative personality that is identified as a third character orientation. Men of this type were most likely to get into knife or pistol fights, whereas the women are tended to be gossipers. The fourth character type that is found in the village is the productive exploitative type. It is the individuals that are the richest and the most powerful in the village. They take advantage of the non-productive receptive villagers by keeping them economically dependent. In general, Fromm and Maccabee found a remarkable similarity between character orientation in this Mexican village and the theoretical orientations Fromm had suggested some years earlier, but it cannot be considered a confirmation of Fromm's theory. As one of the study's principal investigators, Fromm may simply have found what he had expected to find. In general, Fromm
A psychohistorical study of Hitler. Fromm examined historical documents in order to sketch a psychological portrait of a prominent person, a technique called psychohistory or psychobiography. Fromm regarded Hitler as the world's most conspicuous example of a person with the syndrome of decay, possessing a combination of necrophilia, malignant narcissism, and ancestral symbiosis. Hitler's necrophilia was expressed in his mania for destroying buildings and cities, his order to kill defective people, his boredom, and his slaughter of millions of Jews. Another trait Hitler manifested was malignant narcissism. He was interested only in himself, his plans, and his ideology. He had no interest in anyone unless that person was of service to him. His relations to women lacked love and tenderness. He seemed to have used them solely for perverted personal pleasure, especially for voyeuristic satisfaction. According to Fromm, Hitler also possessed an incestuous symbiosis, manifested by his passionate devotion not to his real mother but to the Germanic race. Consistent with this trait, he was also sadomasochistic, withdrawn, and lacking in feelings of genuine love or compassion. All these characteristics, Fromm contended, did not make Hitler psychotic, however, make him a sad and dangerous man. Insisting that people not see Hitler as inhuman, Fromm concluded his psychohistory with these words: any analysis that would distort Hitler's picture by depriving him of his humanity would only intensify of the tendency to be blind to the potential Hitlers unless they were horns. Critic of Fromm. Erich Fromm was perhaps the most brilliant essayist of all the personality theorists.
He wrote beautiful essays on international politics, on the relevance of biblical prophets for people today, on the psychological problems of the aging, and many more. Regardless of the topic, at the core of all Fromm's writing can be found an unfolding of the essence of human nature. Unfortunately, his essays and arguments are not as popularly known as they were 50 years ago. Paul Rosen stated that during the mid-1950s, a person could not be considered educated without having read Fromm's eloquently written Escape from Freedom. From a scientific perspective, we must ask how Fromm's ideas rate on the six criteria of a useful theory. First, Fromm's imprecise and vague terms have rendered his ideas nearly sterile as a generator of empirical research. Indeed, um, last 45 years of psychology literature yielded fewer than a dozen empirical studies that directly tested Fromm's theoretical assumptions. This paucity of scientific investigation places him among the least empirically validated of all the theorists. Second, Fromm's theory is too philosophical to be either falsifiable or verifiable. Nearly any empirical findings generated by Fromm's theory could be explained by alternative theories. Third, the breadth of Fromm's theory enables it to organize and explain much of what is known about human personality. Fromm's social, political, and historical perspective provides both breadth and depth for understanding the human condition, but his theory's lack of precision makes prediction difficult and falsification impossible. Fourth, as a guide to action, the chief value of Fromm's writing is to stimulate readers to think productively. Unfortunately, however, neither the researchers nor the therapists receive much practical information from Fromm's essays. Fifth, Fromm's views are internally consistent in the sense that a single theme runs throughout his writings. However, the theory lacks a structured taxonomy, a set of operationally defined terms, and a clear limitation of scope. Therefore, it weighs low on internal consistency. Finally, because Fromm was reluctant to abandon earlier concepts or to relate them precisely to his later ideas, his theory lacks simplicity and unity. For these reasons, he rated Fromm's theory low on criterion of parsimony. He believed that only humans are aware of themselves and their existence. Human beings are the freak of nature, the only species ever to have evolved in this combination of minimal instinctive powers and a maximal brain development. Fromm was both pessimistic and optimistic. He believed that most people do not accomplish a reunion with nature or other people, and that few people achieve positive freedom. He also had a rather negative attitude towards modern capitalism, which he insisted was responsible for most people's feeling isolated and alone while clinging desperately to the illusion of independence and freedom. Fromm also believed that some people will achieve reunion and will therefore realize their human potential. He also believed that humans can achieve a sense of identity, positive freedom, and growing individuality within the confines of a capitalistic society. On the dimensions of free choice versus determinism, Fromm took a middle position, insisting that this issue cannot be applied to the entire species, but the individuals have degrees of inclination toward freely chosen action. He believed that the ability to reason enables people to take an active part in their own fate. People constantly strive for frame or orientation, a roadmap by which to plan their lives into the future. Fromm also placed slightly more emphasis on conscious motivation and contending that one of the uniquely human traits is self-awareness. Because humans are the only animal that can reason, visualize, and consciously strive towards self-erected goals. He believed that self-awareness is a mixed blessing and that many people repress their basic characters to avoid mounting anxiety. Finally, Fromm placed moderate emphasis on similarities among people. He also allowed room for some individuality. He believed that although history and culture impinge heavily on personality, people can retain some degree of uniqueness. Humans are one species sharing many of the same human needs, but interpersonal experiences throughout people's lives give them some measure of uniqueness.